You look in the book of book of Judges. Let's start in the book of Judges. Okay? Who's blamed for everything? When it says the children of Israel did that which is evil in the eyes of the Lord. What does it say? First time is in here. It's in the second parak, the 11th pasuk. Vayasu v'nei Yisrael Rabbeinu Hashem. Vayavdu with Baalim. Children of Israel. This is a general statement. What they did was evil in the eyes of the Lord. They served the Baalim. Those are the main idols of Canaan, the fertility gods. Vayazvu with Adonai Elohei Avutham Amosio Tham Eretz Yisrael Vayelchu Acharei Elohim Akarim Ve'Elohim Amim Asher Sevivotehem Vayishtahavu Lahem Vayachisu Et Adonai. They abandoned God. The same God, the God of their fathers, took them out of the land of Egypt. They followed other gods from all the nations surrounding them, and they bowed to them, and they angered God. So they abandoned God. They worshipped the Baal and then the Ashtaroth also. So God was angry at them, and He gave them over into the hands of their enemies. This is a recurring theme. That's in the third parak. That leads up to the oppression by Kushan Rishatayim. Here it says the Baalim and the Asheroth, not the Ashtaroth, the Asheroth, holy trees. And then Othniel ben Kenaz arose and saved the Jewish people. Vayosifu b'nei Yisrael la'asot hara b'nei Hashem, vaychazek Hashem et Eglon melech Moav al Yisrael. They did bad to God again, so God raised up Eglon, king of the Moabites, and he afflicted Israel until who showed up? Ehud ben Gera. You go to the fourth parak. Vayosifu b'nei Yisrael la'asot hara b'nei Hashem ve'Ehud meith. They continued doing bad. They did this once again. Ehud was dead. He couldn't keep them in line. So now they're doing bad. So God gave them over into the hands of Yavin, king of the new Canaanite federation. Go to the beginning of the sixth parak. Vayasu v'nei Yisrael hara b'nei Hashem vayitneim Hashem biyad midyan sheva shanim. Now the Midianites had ascension because who's doing bad again? Who is this? What? It says the B'nai Yisrael. It's always Vayasu, Vayasifu. You continue to here. The 10th parak. Vayosifu B'nai Yisrael la'asot hara b'nei Hashem vayavdu et Baalim with Ashtaroth with Elohei Aram with Elohei Sidon with Elohei Moav. Wow, here and there they don't leave anything off the list. Every time it's the Jewish people falling down, and we don't put the blame on anybody in particular. We actually say it has to do more with the fact that the previous shofet died. And it says in the introduction, the shofet keeps everybody in line. And once the shofet is gone, then things begin to downslide. So Yeshua's gone, that's why we have the first backslide. Okay? Ehud's gone, sometime after Devorah's gone. Gidon is no longer around, then the people fall. It says after Gidon died, the people started worshiping Baal Berith. Then we have at the 13th parak, Vayosifu b'nei Yisrael la'asot hara b'nei Hashem vayitneim biyad plishtim 40 shana. That began the Philistine era, right? So each time we have it that the Jewish people themselves are the ones who are backsliding into idolatry. By the way, it wasn't like as profuse as you would think it is based on what you're saying, but it's enough that it had an effect. Okay? And so we here have the sins attributed to the people, and their repentance is attributed mostly to the leader, and he keeps them in line. But the book of Kings, we started to have a change. Okay? Or even with Shaul, we have a change. Okay? What's going on with Shaul? Suddenly, we put the blame on one particular man. The people are going to fall in battle. It's because God has to remove Shaul, and he's refusing to go. David HaMelech makes a mistake. And what is he punished with? Oh, people are going to have to fall in battle. The whole Avshalom thing, yes, it's bad that he had a rebellion within his own ranks. But who died in that war? It was a Jewish civil war, right? Between David HaMelech's men, his supporters, and Ishbosheth's supporters, who died? Regular Israelites. Okay, Ishbosheth eventually was assassinated by his own servants, but David HaMelech wasn't part of this thing. Okay? Other people have to pay for the king, and then starting with the Solomonic era, we go to Rechavam and Yerovam. Yerovam is basically the one blamed. He was their king, and he is the one who is machati, causing everybody else to sin. And started with the rest of the kings, always what it says about a particular king, whether or not the era was good. What does it say? The king did was bad in the eyes of the Lord. Vayas hara, or vayas hayashar v'atov. What do you know is going on here? Before it was the people, and now it's the king. Okay? The sin is attributed to the king, and he causes others to go astray. What's the implication? Though maybe if they hadn't had a king, an official king, a hereditary monarch, maybe he wouldn't have had such an influence on the people to be so bad. They would have done it on their own, okay, or give them a chance. Okay? So he's the one who caused them to stray, and he's usually not their savior. How many kings of Judah and Israel are actually referred to as saviors of the Jewish people? Yeah, Moshiach. All the Shoftim are called Moshiach. That was the verb. It even says Avimelech. All we hear about is his attempts to seize power. It says, and those who rose after him to save Israel. Okay? That's the general, what just happened here? Okay? The general rule is that, am I sharing? No, I'm not sharing the screen. You can't see this. Okay. The general rule is that the Shofet is called the Moshiach. Okay? How many kings of Israel are called Moshiach? Actually, I think Saul is. Definitely David. Okay? The Nevuah about David and Melch to save them. It says about Yehoash ben Yoachaz ben Yehu, save the Jewish people. He was their Moshiach. And that's about it.
It's David, Shlomo, and
not even Shlomo.
It's David and the son of Yehu.
Saul is sometimes called there. I could find the exact word they use it. And Yehu's grandson. Okay? Yoachaz entreated the Lord. That's Yoachaz ben Yehu entreated the Lord because the Arameans were just causing him so much problems, for a good 40 years or so, a whole generation. And he sought, he beseeched the Lord, and God sent them a Moshiach. Okay? His own son became his heir, was the ones who finally beat back the Arameans. Okay? God saved them through him. So yeah, you have a few kings who are actually called saviors of their people. And most of the time, the kings are the ones who shoulder the blame for the national sin. Make sense? As opposed to, none of the Shoftim are called the ones who caused Israel to sin. They're always the hero. They're always the ones who set things in order. And God sends them when it's finally time to take the Jewish people out of their troubles that they brought upon themselves. And the kings also, they have to usually be removed. The only way to remove a king used to be through violence. We found one example in Jewish history, where a king who realized his time was over willfully bowed out. Okay? We found one example thereof. So replacing the current prime minister is like replacing Yerovam. Okay, nowadays, because we have basically a set government, we could basically realize that most of the worst things that happen, we could blame on them. I think if the Navi were today writing continuation of the Book of Kings, he'd put the blame square where it belongs. And it's kind of funny. We talk about alternatives. They're the usual politicians who want to be prime minister, Yair Lapid and the rest of them, Bennett, Gantz, and Gallant, right? They'll want to be there. The difference, the problem is, they don't want to actually change things that matter. We read about all the kings who came after Yerovam. Obviously, they had different policies. The people were fed up with Yerovam and his son, such that when Yerovam died and then his son took over for a few months, he was assassinated and replaced by a new regime. That new regime was popular. That's the one that lasted for almost 2 centuries afterwards. Even if the particular king was assassinated, the regime was kept in place. Because whatever it is that they stood for, socioeconomically, foreign policy, the people liked that. They changed that. Yerovam was unpopular by the time he died. He was doing something wrong on the political level. But his main religious reform was adopted by all his successors. And even when you had a Yehu, who mostly repudiated, his job was to repudiate. He was part of the Ahab regime, by the way. He was Ahab's number 2, right? He used to ride behind Ahab. He was his general. Sarzava was the highest rank you had in the Jewish government back in the day. Many Sarzava became king themselves. So Yehu was appointed, just like Omri himself had been Sarzava of, Basha and his son Elah. Okay, the same regime. Yehu came from that. But Yehu said, we're going to have a religious reform. We're getting rid of all this Baal worship that Achav does. Yet, he kept the religious establishment that had been set by Yerovam. That was the one thing that every single king had to keep. That's the one thing they all want to keep. They might not be a Yerovam in this sense, and we have a different policy with regards to, dealing with Egypt and the Arameans and how we're going to deal with the Moabites. Okay, or taxation, whatever it might be. Yerovam promised less taxes. Perhaps he didn't fulfill that promise. Who knows? It seems that he still lived a very basic lifestyle. All we read about Yerovam is that he still lived in his house in Tirzah, right? He doesn't build a house. Just like Shaul. Shaul's at his farm when he became king. He still didn't take taxes. And for all we know, Yerovam had one wife. He wasn't a polygamist. Didn't live it up like other kings, right? They're all fighting to continue being Yerovam. Someone assassinates the other king, takes over. They're all keeping this one thing in place. So too, everybody wants to take over the prime ministership. Maybe they want to do things differently than the current prime minister. But you know what they want to do? They all want the privilege of punishing Am Yisrael. They all want the privilege of becoming the puppet, the vassal, I'll just do whatever, whoever's influencing, whoever forced this particular deal on us, whoever is the ones who are saying that the army can only operate in certain ways and has to do these, you know it better than I do, right? Who's the one who's making up all the rules? Who's the ones giving all the orders? Yeah, someone up there. They're all fighting over who gets the privilege of being the lapdog. Okay? They're not trying to do this. They want to be who gets to be the privilege of being the Judenrat or the capo who went to stab the rest of the Jews in the back. Okay? So what?
The general.
Yeah.
My boss.
Yeah. Okay, but they're just going to replace them. It's going to be someone else just to enact the same policy. Yeah. Either way, that's what they're fighting for. So what does this mean? It means we need leadership. And the paradox is you need leadership. It's something you can't live without. But the leader brings everyone down. It's his fault. So that's what happens today. The leader matters. And if he is not someone pleasing to God, the rest of Am Yisrael will be punished for it. That's what we find. Also with Manasseh, it talks about Manasseh was so bad, he did this wrong and that wrong and this wrong, and basically the entire Churban is blamed for him. Blamed on him. Okay? Kind of weird. Lastly, it says about Manasseh that he filled Jerusalem peh to peh with innocent blood. Gam naki. Spilled a lot of innocent blood. That's after talking about all the idolatry and all that. God decided, that's it. Destruction of Jerusalem is now, okay? The sentence has been passed. Okay? It's now going to happen. So it says that he and Yehoiakim after him. Also, by the way, they had a lot of bloodshed. Okay? So why are you telling me that afterwards? If a person was actually guilty of the crime of idolatry, which they were, so it says he bowed down to idols, and he set up a pestle in the Beis HaMikdash. And it also says, and he committed murder. According to the Medrash, he murdered his own grandfather, the prophet Isaiah. Okay? Yeah, Manasseh. Okay? So, if he was guilty of these two capital crimes, okay, why don't you just say, he worshipped a lot of idols, and he also committed murder. Instead, he worshipped idols and all this thing, idolatry, everything's idolatry, and God got angry and said, through his prophets, that's it, I'm going to wipe Jerusalem clean and destroy my temple. That's when the Gezerah was, of the Churban. And then, as a postscript in Divrei Yamim and in the Book of Kings, it says, and Manasseh, by the way, also shed a lot of innocent blood, filled Jerusalem with blood. That was just the thing he did. He happened to also have a murder habit. He satisfied his thing. He had to murder someone innocent every single day. And also he says, what? So it's passive. First, the fact that they don't tack it to him, the fact that the Navi doesn't say, like, he was as guilty as murder as he was guilty of, let's say, worshipping idols, which he did. It doesn't say idols, it says worshipped actively. He bowed down to them, ran after them. He set up the idol in the temple, right? If he had committed murder, it says, and he killed people. It would have just said it. And it would have said it out of the way. It wouldn't have said it by the way. And it would have said it more explicitly. And it would have said in poetic terms, filling the streets from peh to peh. So what does it mean here? It means this was more of a diffuse action, and it was passive. That is, Manasseh allowed for bloodshed to happen in his regime. Okay? Not that he himself every day had to just take someone out and execute him just because. I need to kill someone just because. Okay? It meant that he allowed for blood to be shed in Jerusalem. Okay, eat tzedek. Eat tzedek is not necessarily fill the place with blood. It means that he allowed people to actually be killing each other. Yes. So once you have that, if you have eat tzedek, you also have, what's the problem? You let the real murderers go free, right? You're bringing the wrong people to justice, so you're also allowing other people to escape it. It says here, hold on one second. First, let's read what it says about Manasseh. Okay? No, we'll say the exact verse. Okay? First, the description of the idolatry, and then God's sentence. It says, He said through the Nevi'im, that's it, that's what's going to happen. And then it continues. The Gam, Damna ki shafach Manasseh harbe me'od, ad asher mileith Yerushalayim pelofeh, levad mechatothu asher chatiyat Yehuda, lasotha rabbeinu Hashem. Aside from all the things he got the Judahites to do wrong, which involves idolatry, he also had a lot of bloodshed. He says, beside that, he got other people to do wrong. So my proposal here is that you actually, to understand what it means by allowing a lot of blood to be spilled, you have to compare it to where it also accuses another king of doing so. Okay? And then you'll understand what it's referring to. Okay? I'll read it to you here. About Yehoiakim. It says that Yehoiakim was pretty bad. He rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar. He first used to serve Nebuchadnezzar, and then he rebelled. Why shalach Adonai bo et gedudei chastim with gedudei Aram with gedudei Moav with gedudei v'nei Ammon. Okay? God sent forth within him, and he says kingdom, the gedudim of the Kastim. This doesn't mean the army of the Kastim. This means bands of Babylonians, Babylonian terrorist groups. With gedudei Aram, bands of Arameans. The Arameans don't have their own kingdom at this time. They were conquered by the Assyrians, and now they're going to be conquered by the Babylonians, just another vassal of the Babylonians, just like the Judeans would become. Okay, this is ragtag groups. A gadud is not a tzava. Okay, gadud is in the hundreds, and they just do what they want to do. And that says gedudei Moav, gedudei v'nei Ammon. Why shalchem Yehuda laha'avido? They just went in the land of Yehuda, making everything go lost. Kidvar Adonai asher divrei biyadav adav haneviim. Okay, just as God had said through the hands of the Nevi'im. Why? Because they did a lot of sins. The Gam Damnaki Asher Shafach, why Melech Rishleim Damnaki, Velo Avadu Noi Lisloach. Okay? This is all the sins that they did during Yehoiakim's time. Okay? This is the Damnaki. There's a lot of Jews are dying. What was happening in the times of Manasseh was that Manasseh basically allowed violence among Jews, but you can understand Jews among themselves aren't actually going to act violent toward each other, right? Generally speaking. Okay, well, even then. Yet, what's happening here, if I'm not mistaken, I'd like to find further proof to this, is that one of the crimes of the later Judean kings, Manasseh and Yehoiakim, is that they allowed non-Jewish groups, these Gedudim, to go and harm Jews. Okay? Fighting among the Jews. Yes, in Jerusalem itself, there's Tzedek, but also the fact that they're not fighting the enemy. Okay? They're allowing, Shmini Atzeres to happen. Hebron massacre.
Isn't what we have now, more or less, with our government?
Oh, I was trying to be discreet about that, but yes, that's our problem. Our government is basically, it crossed the Yerovam line a long time ago. Definitely the governments in succession have been acting like a bunch of Yerovams, and now they're actually acting totally traitorously. And that's what they're doing. They're allowing bloodshed. This surrender deal is basically setting up the next bloodshed. That which will protect us is our reliance on God. What is reliance on God? It means you don't rely on others. You rely on the power that God gave you. Pray and protect yourselves. Arm yourselves up because that's what's going to come down to. Who saved the day on Shmini Atzeres? Jews. Okay, Jews who knew how to fight. Yeah, maybe they were soldiers. They put on their uniforms and their guns, but they acted independently. Okay, they went in with God alone on their sides, and that's what's going to protect us from the next one. It's almost scary. Like we're dancing on the edge of a volcano now.